Good morning. Welcome to the January 24th, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County House Delegation. Today, we're going to have a short briefing by the Maryland Auto Insurance Fund, and then we will be taking up bills that have been reported out of three of our local committees. So first, I'm going to turn it over to our guests from the Maryland Auto Insurance Fund for their presentation.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I am Al Redmer, Executive Director of Maryland Auto, and with me this morning to my right is Devon Brown, our new Government Relations Manager. Off camera, we have Joe Danahy, our Associate General Counsel, and Colleen Duvall, who is an Executive Assistant for the Government Relations team. We are proud to be here this morning. While I'm going to talk about our insured division, I do also want to mention that we have an uninsured division. Our uninsured folks, they handle claims for individuals that have been injured by an uninsured driver and don't have any recoverable insurance themselves. So that's a big part of what we do. But again, this morning, I'm going to talk about the insured division, which was created by the General Assembly about 50 years ago in an effort to reduce the number of uninsured drivers in Maryland by offering coverage to those that have difficulty getting it in the standard market. Understanding how challenging it can be to insure these kinds of drivers, the legislature also included an assessment mechanism to act as a financial backstop, similar to what occurs in every state in the country. Then in 1985, 40 years ago, understanding that a major hurdle of becoming insured is the cost of it, the legislature mandated that we consider affordability in determining our rates, and we have done that for 40 years. So short and sweet, Madam Chair, is we are doing exactly what we were mandated to do 50 years ago, but more importantly, we're doing it very efficiently and effectively. Moving on, we've got our board is appointed by the governor. I can assure you that they are all professional, they're engaged, and they take their role very seriously. We have about 200 employees, and a metric that we follow very closely is our general and administrative expenses are a mere 10% of our revenue. That's in line, probably as good as most public insurance companies. So when I arrived at Maryland Auto in 2020, I inherited a great team, and I'm happy to say that team is even better today. If you look at the auto insurance basics, so Maryland requires all of us to have a minimum level of coverage, $30,000 per person, $60,000 per accident, and $15,000 for property damage. If you look at our policyholders, 71% only have liability coverage. They don't have comp and collision or anything else. And 99% of our policyholders only have the bare minimum required by law. As a matter of fact, some insurance carriers won't even offer only the minimum limits. So, a majority of our policyholders, they only have minimum limits. And I can assure you that the members of your delegation, probably none of you only have minimum limits. And it's not that our policyholders don't recognize the need or the value of increased limits. They just want to do the right thing, but they cannot afford additional coverage. To be eligible for Maryland Auto, you have to be a Maryland resident, and you have a driver's license or a registration. You have to be canceled by your insurance carrier, or if you're shopping around, if you get canceled by, if you get turned down by two, you can then come to us. It's important to note that understanding our mission, we don't ask about your credit, we don't ask about your employment, and we don't ask about your education. The typical profile of our policyholders are folks that are young, They typically have some financial challenges. And importantly, many have English as their second language. It's also important to note that our cancellation rate is about 52%. So more than half of our policies are not in effect for the full year. Now, some of those folks will go off into the standard market, and that's good. That's why we're here, to be a stopgap. Other folks, they sell their car, they stop driving. But more importantly, some of them continue to drive without insurance. Now, our story can be told with the next chart. I arrived in May of 2020. It was, I thought, at the end of the pandemic, but it wasn't. If you remember back then, the state was closed. Nobody was really driving around. If you're not driving around, you're not hitting things. The rest of the market, they finished 2020 flush with cash. Business 101, you have to deploy that cash somewhere. They did that by buying market share. They lowered their premiums. More importantly, they liberalized their underwriting. They began writing folks in 21 and 22 that they would not have written a couple of years before. So you'll see that our policy count dropped each and every month till we hit the end of 22. And again, that's okay. That's why we're here. As you hit the middle of 22, the economy had opened back up. You will note if you go down 270 or on the Beltway, people are driving faster and crazier than they ever have been. When you're driving faster, you hit things harder. To make a long story short, around the country, claims were out of control. Carriers were losing historic amounts of money. So they raised their premiums. More importantly, they tightened their underwriting. They got much more selective. And they were not writing people that they were writing in 20 or 22. And many of those carriers proactively avoid writing risk in low-income communities. And they do it in subtle ways. If you check with the MIA, they took action against a carrier about 2 years ago, alleging discrimination. Other carriers are more subtle. So as an example, if you get a quote, you might need to have a 40% down payment. Well, if a carrier is requiring a 40% down payment, who are they trying to avoid? Other carriers will say, well, we're not going to give you an auto policy unless you also buy a homeowner's policy. Well, if you don't have enough money to buy a home, again, who is it that they are trying to avoid? And those folks have no choice but to come to us, and you can see that the rates have, our policyholder count has doubled. Now, we believe that the market is beginning to shift again. Carriers are beginning to liberalize their underwriting a bit. So we're projecting a 20% reduction in our policy count throughout 2025. And if you look at this rate chart, to give an example of our rates, now you will see, bear in mind that these rates are before a 13% rate increase that's taken effect at the end of this week. These examples are for a 34-year-old male driving a single 14-year-old Honda Accord. And in one example, we're showing a driver with a clean record. Next, it's one that has one accident and one violation. The chart on the left is for minimum limits of liability only, no more. On the right is more typical coverage, somebody with higher limits and including comp and collision. If you look at liability coverage in Baltimore City, we're looking at $2,500 with violations, $4,000. If you go down and look at Montgomery County, $1,200 or $2,000. If you go to full coverage, you're looking at $3,300 or $5,600. Obviously, we are not giving insurance away. I would invite any of you to call your insurance professional and determine what it might be for you to be insured by Maryland Auto. Next, again, we don't ask about credit, education, or occupation. And then moving on, we're going to look specifically at Montgomery County. Montgomery County policies make up about 20% of our total. The typical policyholder is 40 years old with a 13-and-a-half-year-old vehicle. Most are male, most are young single males. And you can see that for liability only, it's 70% of the population in Montgomery County. 90% only have the legally required minimums. Again, it's not they don't recognize the advantage of more coverage. They just simply cannot afford it. And Madam Chair, I know that we're under the gun for time. I'm happy to answer some questions, or I do have more slides that I'll leave you with.
I appreciate that. Colleagues, if you have questions, please use the virtual raise hand function. And actually, I'll start with one. I'm wondering if it's possible, many of us have email newsletters, and if you have like kind of a short synopsis of what's available and what we might provide as resources to our constituents, I'd say if you pass that along, we're happy to distribute that to members of the delegation who might want to include that in their newsletters. I would certainly be interested in that.
Yeah, that's great. We will certainly do that. Also, we periodically send newsletters to you, to members of the General Assembly with tidbits on what's going on. But yeah, we will specifically share some additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Al, good to see you.
Good seeing you.
In the Environment Transportation Committee this week, we had a hearing on homeowners insurance. And I'm
Yes.
sort of asking you to call upon your prior experience as insurance commissioner.
Sure.
It seems like in the homeowners market, the insurer of last resort is something called the Maryland Joint Insurance Association. So
Yes.
Can you just explain to me how that works versus MAIF? Because MAIF seems a little different than sort of the model in the homeowners insurance market.
Sure. It is very similar, but the policy count there is nowhere near what it is in the auto market, and that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's really not publicized, I think, the way that it should. As a matter of fact, if you check with most of the insurance producers out there, they don't even know that it exists. Secondly, the bigger reason is there's a much larger market and a more competitive market for property insurance in Maryland than there is for auto insurance, including the surplus lines market. So you've got insurance carriers that are regulated by the Insurance Administration, but there's a whole lot of other, think Lloyd's of London as an example, that has much less regulation by the states. They're not as regulated. It's the wild, wild west. They are more likely to insure a property than a standard carrier. So insurance producers, for the most part, are more familiar with the surplus lines market than they are the JIA.
So the only difference is size?
I'm sorry?
The only difference between you and the association is size?
It is size, but it's also the availability of the market. So again, there are carriers that will write coverage for property, so you don't go to the JIA. There are less opportunities to write automobiles for carriers that don't want it. So it's just, they're two completely different markets. There's more access and capacity in the property sector as opposed to the auto sector.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I'm having trouble getting back to my unmute button. Colleagues, any other questions? Okay, seeing none.
Wait,
Thank you, Mr. Redner.
Delegate Spiegel had a question, I think. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hard to see everyone in the side view. Delegate Spiegel.
I raised my hand, Madam Chair, but then changed my mind because I'm going to see the folks from MAIF on Monday in my subcommittee budget hearing, and I'll ask them there, given that we are tight on time here.
All right, fair enough. Thank you to our guests for being here today and for the information.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so colleagues, next we're going to go to our committee reports, and we are going to go in a slightly different order. We're going to start with the report from Metro Washington Area Committee, and then we will go back to the order that is published on the agenda. So I will turn it over to Chair Mira Kunorth for the bill that was reported out of her committee.
For consideration of altering the agenda. So our Metro Washington Area Committee voted on MCPG 10125. And the bill basically was altering the requirements that the planning board and the WSSC had to streamline videos and audios of their open meetings to apply to meetings at certain locations. And there were details regarding that. What we considered were two amendments to address the circumstances in which open meetings would not apply. And so the First Amendment strikes the word altering and substitute with establishing that project site visits and educational field tours where no organizational business is conducted do not constitute open meetings. And the Second Amendment we considered is that we were going to strike certain language and add that a project site or educational field tour does not constitute an open meeting under paragraph 2I of the subsection if no organizational meeting is conducted. So essentially, it clarifies that under those two circumstances for WSSC and the planning board, open meeting is not open meeting, so therefore they do not have to do the live streaming audio and video. Both of those amendments were adopted after a unanimous vote, and the bill as amended was voted out unanimously out of committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any questions before we take an amendment or a motion on the amendments? Okay, is there a motion on the amendments?
Move the amendments.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Delegate Corman, seconded by Chair Mira Kunorth. Any discussion on the amendments? Okay, a reminder, colleagues, if you want to be recorded as voting, you need to come on camera at this point. And I will note that for today's meeting, Delegates Collison, Moon, Chi, and Shetty are all excused.
I'm here.
Couple people. Oh, Delegate Moon's here. My apologies. Still missing Delegate Kaufman, not on camera yet.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I was struggling
There
to
you
get
go.
it, but I got it.
No worries, no worries. Okay, all those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand or say aye.
I
Okay, anyone opposed? So those are unanimous on the amendments. Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
move favorable, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved by Delegate Kaufman, seconded by Delegate Kaiser. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended, please say aye or raise your hand.
I
Okay, anyone opposed? So that bill comes out unanimously out of delegation. Thank you, Chair Mira Kunorth. Next, moving to the bill reported out of the Economic Development Committee, Chair Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Economic Development Committee moved favorably MC 5-25, Montgomery County Task Force on the Displacement of Residents of Emery Grove. What this bill does is set up a task force to study how urban renewal caused the displacement of residents from the Emery Grove community many years ago and make recommendations on potential remedies, excuse me, for those who were displaced. There was an amendment which the committee also voted favorably on, and that amendment would add the chair of the Montgomery County Planning Board or the chair's designee to the task force. Madam Chair, that's the bill, and as I said, the committee is moving favorable on the bill, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foley. Any questions?
Move the amendments.
Second.
Okay, amendments moved by Delegate Corman, seconded by Delegate Solomon, I believe. But correct me if that wasn't right.
Well, I did, but
Oh, okay, Delegate Wims, my apologies. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none. Again, reminder, please be on camera if you wish to be recorded as voting. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye or raise your hand.
I
Anyone opposed? Okay, the amendments are adopted unanimously. Motion, please, on the bill as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Chair Foley, seconded by Delegate Solomon. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that bill also passes unanimously. Thank you, Chair Foley. And moving to our last committee, Chair Spiegel, for the three bills that came out of Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety. We'll start with MC 4-25, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. MC 4-25, sponsored by delegates Charkoudian and Palakovich Carr, authorizes the use of stop sign monitoring systems in school zones and highways in Montgomery County. It is largely identical to a bill that passed last year to authorize this kind of system in Prince George's County, which is now up and running in some stop sign locations in Prince George's, as I understand it. There was some brief discussion in the committee about who is responsible for placing signage on the highways, indicating that you are entering an area that might have cameras on the stop signs. And for anybody who's interested, you can see that language on the bill, page 9, lines 13 through 18. But after checking the Prince George's County version that passed last year, we confirmed that that language is identical to what is already in place in Prince George's County. And so the committee decided to leave it as is, because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so there are no amendments, and the committee voted unanimously for a favorable recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Move favorable, Madam Chair.
Second. Second.
Second.
Bill is moved by Delegate Kaufman, seconded by Delegate Wu. Any discussion on the bill or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that bill passes unanimously. Chair Spiegel, let's go next to 10-25, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. MC 10-25 is a bill from Senator Kramer to authorize the Maryland Transportation Authority to place speed cameras on Route 200, better known as the Inter-County Connector, or ICC. This is the first year after this bill has been introduced in various forms for a few years. This is the first year in which the Maryland Transportation Authority, MDTA, and the State Highway Administration, SHA, both support the bill. And it differs a little bit from the prior year versions because it does not dictate the specific number or type of monitoring systems, and instead places our trust and delegation for those operational type decisions to the agency itself. There is uncodified language that requires SHA to share its resources and technology of its speed monitoring systems with MDTA to help reduce costs. So there are no amendments, and the bill was unanimously recommended by the committee with a favorable report.
Thank you. Is there any questions about the bill? Otherwise, we would entertain a motion.
Move favorable.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Delegate Frazier Hidalgo, seconded by Delegate Kaiser. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that bill also is unanimously favorable recommendation. And our last bill for today, MC 1-25, Chair Spiegel.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. MC 125, sponsored by delegates Moon, Charkoudian, and Wilkins, and Senator Smith, is a bill to allow Montgomery County or a municipality within the county to decrease the maximum speed limit on a highway. You have seen this bill come before our delegation before, and the point of the bill is to allow local jurisdictions to make this decision without performing an engineering or traffic investigation as currently required by state law. Originally in the bill, there was language indicating that a local jurisdiction could only make that decision to lower speed limits without performing an engineering or traffic study if the highway had a specified target speed identified in Montgomery County's Complete Streets Design Guide. The idea there, obviously, to target those streets that are already identified as appropriate for lower speed limits for road safety and pedestrian safety. However, after conferring with the Montgomery County Planning Department and the sponsor in trying to determine if the Complete Streets Design Guide was in fact the right document from the Montgomery County Planning Department to reference, there was also a reference in our discussions to a master plan for highways that the county also has. And so to avoid some confusion over which document is the right document to refer to, Delegate Moon offered an amendment which essentially eliminates that reference to that Complete Streets Design Guide and would just streamline the bill and essentially say that local jurisdictions can reduce speed limits without performing an engineering and traffic investigation, period, full stop. And so with that, the planning department indicated that they were supportive of that amendment and that it just made it cleaner and easier to apply the intent of the bill. And as I understand it, it also matches a prior version of the bill from previous years, which did not have that reference to the Complete Streets Design Guide. And so the committee unanimously endorsed amendments 1 and 2 to MC 125, and then unanimously voted for a favorable report with amendment.
Thank you. Any questions on this bill? Okay, we would take a motion, please.
Move favorable on the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Delegate Kaiser, seconded by Delegate Corman. Any discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
The amendments are adopted unanimously on the bill as amended.
Move favorable as amended.
Second.
Moved by Delegate Kaiser, seconded by Delegate Foley. Any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that bill passes unanimously. Thank you, Chair Spiegel.
Thank you.
Lastly, well, two more things actually. We'll go to any announcements from our committee chairs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Land Use, Transportation, and Public Safety Committee will meet via Zoom on Monday at 11 a.m., not noon, 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Economic Development Committee will meet Thursday at 8:30 a.m. on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Education, Elections, and Housing Subcommittee will meet next Thursday at noon on Zoom.
Vice Chair Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry I sound like this. I'm a little under the weather. And Chair Bernice from Merco North had to jump off, but Metro Washington will meet tentatively at 6:30 on Monday.
Thank you very much. And then lastly, colleagues, a heads up, nearly everyone in our delegation, I believe all but 4 of us have elected to sign on to a letter that Ralph has circulated last Friday, and it should have been bumped in your inbox to support a federal grant application that MDOT is putting in. If you have not signed on yet, really today at noon is the absolute deadline. So for the 4 folks who aren't on, if you want to be on, now is the time. But please, you can reach out to Ralph if you're not sure if you're on already on the letter yet. Any other announcements before we adjourn? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Great work today.